Hi everyone. Today is a special live. I'm so glad to be hosting this live session today in collaboration with the Blockchain Research Institute, BRI Middle East, and a special thanks to managing partner of BRI Middle East, Alan Dawood. Today, I'm with one of the world leading people on the impact of technology on business and society, having authored more than 16 widely read books. He has coined many concepts that are the part of the business today and is sought by corporate and government leaders globally. He is currently co-founder and executive chairman of Blockchain Research Institute and professor at INSEAD. Today I'm with Don Tapscott. Hi Don, I'm really happy. I'm really pleased to be with me today.
I'm happy to be here too.
Today we talk about blockchain. How do you think blockchain technology is different from any technology before it?
Any technology. Well, I won't go back to the hammer and the hoe and so on, but let's talk about digital technologies. If you flash back to 40 years ago, it was a world of mainframes and mini computers. The PC was 1982. There were no PCs until then, and managers and professionals didn't use technology. Um, Then we saw the rise of the PC and then the internet and the web in the early 1990s. Then that led to the rise of the mobile web, social media, the cloud, big data. That was the first era of the digital age. Now we're entering a second era that's characterized by a number of extraordinary technologies. They include artificial intelligence, machine learning, technology that learns to do things it wasn't programmed to do. We have the physical world is becoming interconnected with an internet of things, millions and billions of inert objects in our world that become smart communicating devices that soon will be not just exchanging information but doing transactions. And the foundational technology for the second era is the underlying technology of cryptocurrencies or blockchain. And I think of blockchain as really the second era of the internet and the operating system for the second era of the digital age. And just very briefly on that, for 40 years, we've had an internet of information, right? But if I send you some information, a PDF, a photograph, an email, I'm actually sending you a copy. That works great for information, but it doesn't work for assets, things of value, like money or securities or intellectual property or the data in our identities or contracts or deeds or stocks or uh, art, cultural assets like music or votes. A vote is an asset, something of value that belongs to somebody. Copying those is not a good idea. You don't want someone copying your vote or your identity. And if I send you $1,000, it's really important that I don't still have the money, right? Now, cryptographers have called this the double spend problem. And the way that we manage this problem with assets in our economy is through intermediaries. We have banks, credit card companies, stock exchanges, now some technology companies. They perform all of the business and transaction logic for every type of commerce. They identify the asset, they clear and settle transactions, they keep records, and overall they've done a pretty good job. But there are growing problems. They're centralized, so they can be hacked. They exclude a couple of billion people from the global economy. They cost too much. Why does it cost, you know, 11% for a housekeeper in Toronto to send money back to her mother in, I don't know, in Egypt or um, in the Philippines? And the big problem is that they capture our data, and that undermines our privacy and it creates a whole bunch of other problems. So, to answer your question, what if they were not just an internet of information? What if they were an internet of value? Some kind of vast global distributed network where anything of value from money to securities to intellectual property to art could be managed, stored, transacted in a secure and private way. That's what blockchain is. And it
Okay.
began it began in 2008 with Satoshi Nakamoto, who invented Bitcoin, and Satoshi solved the double spend problem. Now, Bitcoin was just the beginning, but this is an extraordinary thing because we now have an internet of value. For the first time in history, people globally can trust each other to do transactions with assets peer to peer. And trust is not achieved by an intermediary, it's achieved by cryptography and some clever code.
Yes. You said that we have a new concept, internet of value. How this internet of value or blockchain can change the way the banks and business do business?
Well, that's a big question. I'll try and give a brief answer. But at the Blockchain Research Institute, we study 18 different industries and how this technology affects them. But you said first banking, and the answer is profoundly. See, if you think about what do banks do, everything that banks do can actually be done by software. This is called DeFi, decentralized finance. And you don't need a bank to do the basic functions. What do banks do? They move value around, money, assets. Well, you can do that on a network now, peer to peer. They store value. Well, everyone who owns some crypto is storing value without a bank. They exchange value. There used to be stock markets, but now there are markets for digital assets. And some of these exchanges are purely decentralized. They invest value. You used to need an investment banker, and you have mutual funds and hedge funds and private equity and all the rest. Well, there was a $4 million fundraising effort several years ago, $4 billion, that raised money to invest in a business, and there was no investment bank, no stock market, and no stock. The investors bought tokens to represent an interest in the company. There are 9 things that these banks do, and Alex Tapscott, my co-author, and my son, has written about this a lot. Now, that doesn't mean the banks will go away. They're smart enough to understand that this is called disintermediation. If you're in the middle of value, then you can be disintermediary. But there's something called reintermediation, a word I invented in 1994 in my book, The Digital Economy. And I said that there are opportunities to create new value in the middle. And that's what banks are trying to do now. In 1994, I said, bookstores, it's not about assets, it was about information back then. Bookstores are between the creators of information, the authors and publishers, and the readers. I think they'll go away. But I said a new kind of company could re-intermediate in the middle, and it could be a really big company. Well, it turns out what's in the middle now is called Amazon. 6 months later, Amazon was incorporated, and it's one of the biggest companies in the world. So banks are working hard to address that challenge as well. Now, that's just one industry, financial services.
Yes.
I could give you a similar story for any industry.
Okay. Yes. Um, I have a question, and I think it's a critical question. Does the banks or the traditional banking or banks will disappear after blockchain?
Will there be banks?
Banking or banking industry will disappear completely after
Yes.
blockchain?
Yes, there will, for the reasons that I just said. But it will be a very different industry. than the one that exists today. For example, many people would like to have a custodian for their assets, a trusted intermediary that would hold these assets in a cold storage in a place where they're protected. They don't want to carry them around on their phone or on a network. And there are smart banks that perform that function. This is called re-intermediation, the creation of new businesses and new value in the middle.
Yeah. So blockchain will create new business model we don't see now in the future.
Well, I think that we can see the contours really well of how this is shaping up. There's a very good paper that's available for free
Mm.
by Alex Tapscott called the Digital Asset Revolution. And it's available at the blockchainresearchinstitute.org. And it describes these 9 things that banks do and how they're now being replaced by software.
Yes. You said that there will be new digital assets. What is the new digital assets will appear after blockchain?
New digital assets? Well, it's not after blockchain. Blockchain enables new
Yep.
kinds of digital assets. So it turns out everyone thinks that, well, those are called currencies, right? Well, cryptocurrencies are one of 9 types of new digital assets. And we're going through a process whereby all assets are becoming digitized or represented by a digital piece of software, a token. And so we have currencies like Bitcoin. Bitcoin's amazing. The amazing thing about it is that it works. But we also have other types of digital assets. For example, there are tokens that represent things like securities, like stocks and bonds and so on. There are tokens that represent physical assets in the natural world. We call them natural asset tokens. And these tokens can represent a physical asset like a tree or a barrel of oil, but they could also represent a synthetic or software asset, like, for example, a carbon credit. And in fact, the tokenization of natural assets will be key to solving the whole problem of carbon. But we've got all kinds of other assets as well. We've got there are assets like stable coins, which is not really a cryptocurrency, but it's a different type of asset. We've got assets that are tokens that are called protocol tokens. So ETH, the token in Ethereum, is a protocol token. It enables smart contracts to get created and for the Ethereum network to function. You have governance tokens. These are tokens that enable all of the participants in a decentralized network like this to have some control, some voting and influence over the direction of the network and the kinds of things that happen. Now, traditionally, the way this was done was through a board of directors, centralized, and they selected a management committee, right? And the management committee created an org chart, and everybody reported up to the CEO, who reported to the board. Well, now in these decentralized environments, they're governed and stewarded very differently. So, as an aside, this involves a minor little thing called the reinvention of management and governance. This is a huge topic. You know, Peter Drucker were here today. There'd be a new Peter Drucker working to invent all of this. And at the Blockchain Research Institute, we do a lot of work in that area. There are also exchange tokens that work in a digital exchange. So the point is that these are all forms, they're central bank digital currencies. These are different forms of tokens. This is the blindfolded person and the elephant. But an elephant is not just a trunk, a trunk, and it's not just a leg, and it's not just a big wall, and it's not just a snake like a tail. An elephant is an elephant. An elephant has a whole number of different parts.
Yes. You talk about decentralization. How will government around the world use blockchain? Because I think blockchain is all about decentralization. Is decentralization is against the government system?
Well, that's a very interesting question. First of all, governments can use blockchain in many ways. Um, a big one is that they can make their national currencies a digital currency. And this is underway around the world. I'm actually looking forward to a meeting with the head of the central bank in the UAE about this, but I meet with central bankers all around the world. And the real leader here is China, that's moving ahead with its central bank digital currency. It's called the DCEP. But we need to make the euro and the pound and the yen and the RMB and the dollar. All of these need to become digital currencies. So that's a big one. Secondly, blockchain can change the operations of a government. I don't think the internet had a really big impact on the way governments function. We still pretty much do things the way that we always have. Sure, there are government websites, and maybe there's one stop shopping for government services, and these things are very beneficial. But overall, governments still look like governments. Well, with blockchain, these more decentralized business models can enable governments to reinvent themselves to create value for citizens in much more effective ways that have lower costs, but where the end result are better services and better everything, better roads, better management of taxes. Blockchain will be used for all taxes in the future. There won't be companies calculating their payroll tax. You pay someone on a blockchain, there's a smart contract that automatically deducts the tax and submits it to government. And at the end of the year, the smart contract calculates all the details to that as well. So there are many, many applications in government. But a third thing is in countries that are democratic, blockchain can help a lot. And that there's a real crisis of legitimacy of democracy around the world today. And legitimacy is the idea that you may disagree with who's in power, but at least you think they're the best government. Well, in many, many countries, people challenge that now. You think in the United States, a third of the population thinks that the last election was rigged. This is an election that was scrutinized more than any other election in American history. Every vote was counted by multiple people and lawyers many, many times. Challenges in courts, huge transparency throughout. It may have been the most scrutinized election and the most perfectly scrutinized election in the history of democracy. Yet a third of the population thinks it was a fake. So this is a big, big problem, and blockchain can help in many ways. We talk about this in our book, Blockchain Revolution. I'll just say one other thing on this topic, Zakaria, that this is not just about government as the owner of the creator of money, or government and the business of government, or government and the nature of governance. But it's also about the role of a government in this new innovation economy, which is emerging. It's a very sad thing. I'm in Canada, which is a great country, and this is where Ethereum was created. Ethereum has greater value than the most successful Canadian company ever created. Today, the most valuable company in Canada is RBC. It's a huge huge, very successful bank. Ethereum is twice as big, more than twice as big as Ethereum. Sorry, as RBC. Ethereum is almost twice as big. So our regulatory environment, though, took this wonderful thing and forced it to leave the country. All those jobs, all that innovation. So the Silicon Valley of the first era of the digital age was Silicon Valley, right? Where will the second era be? Well, that's an interesting question. It won't just be in one place because this is more decentralized. Maybe it will be in New York. Maybe if Canada can change its attitude, it could be in Toronto. Maybe it will be in London or in Shanghai or Shenzhen, or maybe it could be in Cairo. Dubai is certainly doing a lot of very powerful things in this area. Wants to be the first blockchain-based government, for example. So this is an issue of national strategy on whether or not to embrace this technology and create the conditions whereby it can succeed. Now, I know I mentioned my son Alex, and he was in Cairo recently, and he was on stage and had a debate with the head of the central bank in Pakistan, among other people. And the head of the central bank in Pakistan is very skeptical about this technology. Thinks it's just about criminals, or that that a lot of bad things happen because of crypto and blockchain. And that's not to say there aren't problems, but I think that he's making a terrible mistake by just shutting down this technology. And government leaders and business leaders in Egypt should wake up and understand that this is a huge opportunity. Yes, there are issues to be managed, but this is a huge opportunity to build a vibrant innovation economy.
So the government should have a strategy on how blockchain will implement in government sector.
In government, but more overall in the economy. Now, again, we've laid out a blueprint on how to do this. It's called Government in the Second Era of the Digital Age. It's a report by the Blockchain Research Institute that's publicly available to everyone. It was written for Joe Biden and the American White House, but it's publicly available, and anyone can get that on blockchainresearchinstitute.org.
Yes.
I will also say that, and thank you, you have Blockchain Research Institute Middle East behind you. Yes. We have a very strong organization in the Middle East, and it's based in Doha, but we have a vast sort of experience in the region. I've been there many, many times, and I'll be in Dubai and Doha coming up in May of this year as well. I've actually talked about this issue to the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi when I was very honored that he invited me to give the inaugural Majlis lecture 4 years ago in Abu Dhabi. And he was quite interested in the topic.
Yes. So do you see BRI will promoting the blockchain usage and awareness in Middle East on all over the countries? How will BRI will change the mindset?
Well, not easily. With a lot of work. We provide a whole series of programs that are designed to do exactly that, to change the mindset. We have deep research, 130 projects looking at opportunities and problems, issues, regulation, and so on. We have big events in November 22nd. That week in Toronto, people will be coming all around the world for Blockchain Revolution Global, where we will be exploring all of these issues. We have a series of online education programs through Coursera. Coursera is the largest provider of online courses in the world, and our partner to do this is INSEAD, the #1 business school in the world, located in Paris and Singapore. In the BRI in Middle East, we have face-to-face training and education programs, 1 week courses that you can attend. And I just signed the first certificates for graduates of that program, and they're conducted in Arabic. We have a series of books that we're publishing on this topic, and they're available on Amazon.com. Books called Platform Revolution, The Supply Chain Revolution, and The Financial Services Revolution. A good introduction to all of this is my TED Talk, which has now been viewed by, I think it's close to 7 million people.
Yeah, 7 million people.
That's the most watched video on the topic of blockchain in the world, at least in the English-speaking world. There may be something bigger in China. I was on television in China once talking about this, and within 24 hours, the web presentation of that TV session got 3 million likes, not views, likes. So the numbers in China are kind of crazy around all of this. But we're doing many, many things. You go to blockchainresearchinstitute.org and you can learn about those.
Yes, it's a great work for BRI Middle East. Okay, for education system, how will blockchain change the education system in all over the world, especially in Middle East? How can we benefit from this technology?
Well, the main opportunity has to do around credentials and the student record. And that may sound like a minor little thing, but it's not. It's a big deal. And the reason is that if you think about our education system in primary grades, high school, and university, we really do have still an industrial model. And the industrial age was an age of scale and standardization, right? Where something at the top had power or knowledge, and they push it out to passive recipients. So we push out products, we push out television shows, we push out advertisements, we push out diagnoses. You know, I'm a doctor, I have knowledge, you're a patient, you don't. Get ready, I'll tell you what's wrong with you, and don't collaborate with anyone else. You just listen and do what I tell you, because you're going to get bad information. Well, if you think about the schools, I'm a teacher, I have knowledge, you're a student, you don't. Get ready. Here it comes. And you're a passive recipient, and your goal is to take it into short-term active learning and through practice and repetition to build deeper cognitive structures whereby you can recall it to me. Drill and kill, right? The sage on the stage. You know, the lecture is an excellent way of learning for the 15th century, but we're not in the 15th century. And we still have teachers standing up lecturing students about statistics. There's no, one size fits all for statistics. Everyone in the classroom is either bored or else they don't get it, right? The lecture is perfect. The lecture is the process whereby the notes of a lecture go to the notes of a student without going through the brains of either. So we can move to a new student-focused, customized, personal, active model of education. And it turns out that that whole thing, changing pedagogy, centers around the record. Like if you have a patient record that you own, not the institution, and that's verified and valid, not a patient record, a student record, and it's very granular. It's not just, chemistry 202, you got a B plus. It's chemistry 202. Here's all of your lab reports. Here's what your prof said about this and that. Here's how your project went. Here's how, here's a presentation that you made of your project. Here are all your essays. Here are your grades on each of the semesters. You own it. Then if you own it, then you can start to do things with it. Maybe you could transfer it to another institution. And the whole idea of the ivory tower and as a traditional hierarchy of knowledge can start to break down, where we think about education becoming more decentralized and focused on the student, and where students can meet each other with this kind of record and collaborate, and all kinds of new things can happen. So again, we've done a lot of research on this topic, blockchain in the schools, blockchain and the reinvention of the university as well.
Yes. I, what's your thoughts about metaverse and blockchain? Is there is integration between metaverse and blockchain or not?
Well, the metaverse is an idea that's been around for a long time. And these are sort of rich virtual worlds, right? Where you interact and all kinds of good things can happen. And in a metaverse, we can. There's so much to talk about on this, but these are basically people-centric shared experiences, and ultimately, it's connecting with others to do everything that we do in the physical world: school, at work, at play, and so on. Almost everything. And metaverses have the potential to enhance or complement our real world experiences. But they can also be a problem as well. And we sort of reached a turning point or a tipping point where metaverses went as far as they could, but they were limited. And they were missing a key technology, and that technology is blockchain. And with blockchain and other things, new innovations, new kinds of incentive systems, and so on, we can create truly rich and engaging environments. And there were three fundamental problems that blockchain addressed. First is the problem of a currency or money within a metaverse. And we couldn't really have these until we have a digital currency or a cryptocurrency. Secondly, we needed to be able to protect assets. If you buy a house or a piece of land or a piece of art, we need that art to be protected so that it can't be replicable or someone can't take it away from you. And blockchain enables that because it's the internet of value or assets, right? And key assets are called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. The third thing that the metaverse does is it solves a big problem in the digital world, but also in the physical world with our digital identities. So we create all of this data as we go throughout life, the virtual you, right? And the virtual you knows more about you than you do because you can't remember where you were a year ago or what you said or what you bought or what medication you had or what diagnosis you had or what score you got on a test. You create this data, but it gets expropriated by these digital giants. We call them digital conglomerates. That means you can't use the data to plan your life. You can't monetize the data. The data is not secure. And it means that your privacy is being undermined. And people say, well, Don, privacy's dead. Get over it. I think this is stupidity. Privacy is the foundation of freedom. And we need to get our digital identities back so that we can manage them responsibly for ourselves and for our families. This can be done now in a metaverse because of blockchain. So the metaverse was an idea in waiting, and it was waiting for the second era of the internet to make it come alive.
Yes. I know you are so interested in music, but what's the relationship between blockchain and what is called NFTs? What's your opinion about NFTs and music?
Well, the Internet of Information broke the music industry. If you were a songwriter, say, 35 years ago, and you wrote A platinum song sold 1 million singles. As a songwriter, you would make about 46,000 US dollars. And today, 1 million streams will generate $35. $35. That'll buy you a nice bowl of couscous, in Cairo. So that's a big problem. It's a problem for the creators of music, but it's also a problem for the lovers of music, because we need good incentive systems to be able to fairly compensate musicians. And all of the value and all of the power has been concentrated, not just in labels, but in these large streaming companies like Spotify and so on. So blockchain can change that. Now, there's the theory of how it can change it, and then there's the reality of how this is happening. The theory we described 6 years ago in Blockchain Revolution. And it was this vision by Imogen Heap, the British singer-songwriter, Grammy-winning. And she said, imagine a music industry where you, as an author of a song, post your song, or as a performer, a recording artist, you post your song on a blockchain that's inside a smart contract. And the smart contract specifies all of the intellectual property rights of the song. So you want to listen to the song once, it's free. You want to put the song in your movie? Well, that's different. What do you want to do? It's a theme song, background music, somebody's going to sing this song. And the way she described it is that the smart contract and the song negotiate all the intellectual property rights. And that the song acts as a business, protecting the creator of the song. And this would be a truly extraordinary new kind of music industry. Now, the way that and we'll get there, I hope, one day, but the way that it's evolving is much more complicated. And I was in Austria just before Christmas in the fall, and I met a company called Globalrockstars.com, globalrockstar.com. And it's a platform based on blockchain for the music industry, where a songwriter puts theirs and a performer put their song up there. And then you, as a lover of music, if you like the song, you can invest in the song. You can actually buy an NFT that is a piece of the song, and you are the only person in the world to own that piece of the song. And if the song becomes a big hit, as an investor, you, as the listener, make money. So again, this is a move away, Zakaria, as I was describing, from the industrial age of everything. I'm a teacher, I have knowledge, here it comes. I'm a manufacturer, I have products, here they are. I'm a record label, I push out this song to you, I hope you like it.
Yes. Yeah.
And it enables the lovers of music to become engaged in the song. So that's just one example of some really interesting things that are happening.
Yeah. So you said that the music industry will change. For example, the famous application for music industry now, it will not found or appear in the future.
Well, this exists today. Globalrockstar exists today. And it's one example of applications in the music industry. There are others around rights management, rights protection. Again, you can find these at blockchainresearchinstitute.org.
Yes. What are the difficulties and risks you see that will face blockchain or currently face blockchain technology for wide adoption?
For wide adoption? Well,
Yes.
there are a number of impediments. The number one is governments that don't understand this, but also governments that are hostile intentionally. They're malicious because they view this technology wrongly as a threat to their economy or their society. And regulation around the world is the number one impediment to this moving forward. That doesn't mean there should be no regulation. We need a balance. The role of regulation is not just to protect investors and consumers. Regulators need to enable innovation to occur and to create the conditions whereby innovation can happen. And right now, we've got the balance is not right for that. But also, there are many other problems. The technology is still relatively immature, but that will change and evolve. I remember in 1994, I showed people the internet, and you're too young to remember this, but you loaded a web page on a computer with a dial-up network. There was no Wi-Fi, and the page would load like this. I won't show you the whole thing because it would take another 60 seconds to do that. So people say, I'm not going to use that. My own son said to me, Dad, you can just look at it. You can't do anything with it. You can't interact with it. And he was right, of course. Well, that changed as well. Now, he was 8 years old at the time, in fairness to Alex. And the people say, well, the internet's 1994. The only applications are porn, or it's used by criminals. Well, criminals are always the first to adopt exciting new technologies, but there are a lot of misconceptions about this. Do you know what's used by criminals? The main currency? Cash. DRAM, the dollar in the United States. 3% of dollars are used for nefarious purposes. 15 basis points of Bitcoin, probably our estimates, are used for criminal activity. And law enforcement love Bitcoin. It's way better than cash because if you and I do a transaction, it's anonymous, but there's metadata. And there are great examples of how law enforcement uses crypto to catch the bad guys. So anyway, but a lot of these attitudes need to change. There are other problems as well. But overall, if you look at all of these impediments, that's what they are. You put them in box number 1 or box number 2. Okay, box number 1. This is a reason why blockchain and crypto is a bad idea and it's not going to work. Okay. Box number 2 is implementation challenges. And every single problem that I've ever seen raised about this technology goes in box number 2. It doesn't go in box number 1.
Yes, it's great. How do you see blockchain in the future, or the blockchain future?
In the future?
Yes. Is a
Well,
technology or blockchain technology will still face a lot of challenge for wide adoption, or you see another picture of the technology?
it will be widely adopted. It's the second era of the internet. But it will be uneven around the world, and some governments will attempt to stop it, and those will be economies that tend to lack innovation and competitiveness, and they will fall behind, and their leaders may be replaced. So the stakes are very, very high in understanding this if you're a government leader, or for that matter, a business leader. If you don't understand how this technology can enable new business models, then you will tend to fall behind and become less competitive too. This is 1994. There were lots of good companies back then. Kodak, Nortel, Barnes and Noble, bookstores, Blockbuster, video rentals. These are great companies in 1994, and they didn't see this thing coming. And that's where we are today. So we needed to have a wake up around the world and understand the significance of this technology. As for the future, I'm not a futurist. The future, to me, is not something to be predicted. It's something to be achieved. And I know that we in the Blockchain Research Institute in the Middle East and in other parts around the world are working hard to achieve a better future and a new kind of future where there's prosperity and there's better health and there's more effective models of government and where we can have a better and fairer financial system and where our supply chains, rather than these terrible, confusing, spaghetti mishmash things that we have today, you have a shared network state where there's a single version of the truth, where there are real-time transactions, where there are smart payments, where there are micro payments, and where there's a supply chain that has integrity and that works and can sense and respond. I mean, these are all the kinds of opportunities, and I don't know, will they happen? How soon? I don't know. We're just working hard to make it happen.
Yes. It's a great. I want to ask about the professions. How blockchain will change the job market, and especially accounting, auditing, finance job.
Well, again, we've done some interesting work on blockchain and the C-suite. Okay. So you mentioned accounting, finance. Let's start with that one, the CFO. Well, with blockchain, there's something called triple entry accounting. So double entry accounting was the foundation of capitalism and of a corporation. There are some people, probably accountants, who say that it was the greatest innovation in history. And I don't know if that's true, but the idea is that every time you have a debit, that there's a matching credit
Yes.
correspond to that. And the two, in the end, must always balance, which is why you have something called a balance sheet at the end of the year. And at the end of the year, you have the big accounting companies, they come in and they sample a bunch of transactions and they do an audit. Well, with triple entry accounting, there's a debit and a credit, but there's also a third entry that's automatically made under on a blockchain. And those third entries essentially constitute the balance. And so it's now possible to have a triple entry accounting whereby there's a real-time balance sheet. So you won't have an audit at the end of the year. You'll say, I'm Zakaria and I run this business. I want an audit right now. Or I want an audit at 2:00 this afternoon. And boom, real time, there's an audit. And it's not an audit of samples. It's an audit of every single transaction that's occurred because they're all on a blockchain. So the whole concept of accounting is one of the areas that is up for very dramatic change, we believe. Now, this is true for every other C-suite function. You're the chief strategy officer. Well, what does strategy mean if you're a bank? And all of a sudden software can do what you do. This is not about tweaking. Tinkering is not going to work. You need to come up with radical new ways of thinking about your business. The chief people officer. Well, talent was inside our boundaries, right? The expression, your most precious asset goes out the elevator every night. Well, with blockchain, talent can be outside now as organizations become more decentralized. So what does that mean for HR? Pick anything, the chief technology officer, the chief information officer. We have all these traditional systems based on servers, and everyone's trying to just move these old capabilities and functions onto a cloud. Well, that's not going to really help fundamentally, because blockchain increasingly will be the operating system because it's more secure. It's going to enable new business models. It's ultimately going to cost a lot less than a traditional ERP and other types of software. So each of these C-suite functions need to change dramatically. It's really interesting for me to notice how some executives are really curious about all of this, and others are, it's terrible. They just read what this is, criminals use this, right? And they don't comprehend it. It's a very interesting thing. It has to do with the culture of an organization. I can tell in 2 minutes if I walk into an executive office what the culture is like and whether they're going to have a hope of comprehending these things. I think we just have a few more minutes here.
Yes. Um, the last question I want to ask today, I'm so sorry for all the followers because they comment on the live, but because this is limited time with Don Tapscott, so I don't have the time to take your comments. The last question for me, how do you think Middle East, especially countries like Egypt, can benefit from blockchain technology, and where we want to start? We will start.
Well, the Middle East is part of the world, and every industry is being changed by this technology. The Middle East has some very, I won't say unique, but specialized opportunities as well. And a big one has to do with oil and gas. Um, that overall, we need to move towards a greener economy. And there are big opportunities for blockchain in the existing oil and gas industry, upstream, midstream, and downstream. And again, we've done a lot of work on this at the Blockchain Research Institute, and available at blockchainresearchinstitute.org. But there are also big opportunities ultimately as these companies need to become green energy companies. And that's a hard thing to admit. And many executives in that industry don't admit it. And for sure, we need oil today, we need gas today to run our economies. But over time, that's changing. And right now, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has accelerated the interest in alternate forms of energy as well. It's a good time for the industry because prices are so high, but it's also the beginning of an accelerated move towards green energy models. And blockchain will be the foundation of the green energy world. Just think about consumers. I mean, you'll have a solar panel and you'll be able to sell your energy into the grid if you're not using it, be stored in batteries. And all of these transactions will happen on a blockchain because it's distributed like the energy grid will be distributed and decentralized. And when this light bulb buys some power from some distributed power source, and its reputation as a trustworthy device will become enhanced. It pays its bills promptly, says the network. And that means that perhaps that light bulb will be able to acquire power more cheaply. And as a homeowner, I'll be able to look at a dashboard and look at all the power I'm using and adjust things. So that's not going to happen. That transaction of that light bulb is not going to go through Visa. I'll tell you that. It's going to go on a distributed ledger. It'll be part of smart contracts and so on. So we spend a lot of time with the big oil and gas companies. In fact, the Blockchain in Oil and Gas Association, it's based in Houston, is now called Blockchain for Energy, and they are an affiliate of the BRI. And I gave the opening keynote to their big congress that happened in Houston in September. It was the first time I'd been on an airplane in a year and a half. And so that's one of some unique opportunities in the Middle East. And we're very proud of our organization, Blockchain Research Institute Middle East, and the very strong work that they're doing. And you can find them online as well.
Thank you, Don, for your great live session with you. I would like to invite Egypt soon because we need a lot of this energy and the future of this technology, how will change our society, our business. Thanks again,
Well,
Don.
and thank you. And I would love to come to Egypt. I've been almost everywhere in the world, and weirdly, I've never been to Egypt, and I do want to make a trip there. So if there's a big conference that's looking for a keynote speaker, then they can talk to me, and I'll refer them to my agent. But let me end with one thought. You know, I talked about opportunities to build a better world here, and just to be clear, it's not the technology that brings about change like this. It's people. People change things, not technology. But the Internet of Information created a whole bunch of problems. You know, we have a fragmentation of public discourse. There's a bifurcation of wealth that's related to the digital age. Our digital identities have been captured by a tiny handful of powerful companies. There are a whole set of growing problems. And the second era is not going to solve those problems. But what it does is it gives us another opportunity. Because once again, the technology genie, if I can use an example from Aladdin, the genie has escaped from the bottle. And it was summoned by an unknown person or persons in 2008. And that person had unclear motives. And it was summoned at this very uncertain time in human history. And it's not going to solve our problems, but it gives us another kick at the can. It gives us another opportunity to rewrite the economic power grid, to dramatically change our institutions, our systems for commerce, our supply chains, and our government operations, and to improve those things for the better. But only if we will it. And it requires each of us to become curious, to get involved, to learn more. And if we do this by the millions and millions around the world, tens and hundreds of millions, and we bring our legitimate expectations and goals and aspirations to the table, then maybe this more decentralized world that our children and our grandchildren inherit might actually be a better one. So thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to chat about these topics.
Thanks again, Don, for your great speech and this live session. And thanks for all the followers from Egypt and the Arab countries and all around the world. Thanks you. Thanks. Bye.
Well, I'll see you in Cairo soon, I hope.
Inshallah. Inshallah in Arabic
Yeah.
soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, bye.